I'm nostalgic today. I don't know why, but the memories returned. A day that changed everything, quietly, without warning, without reason. And ever since, nothing has felt the same. The day that turned my certainty into silence and my love into proof I never gave. Maybe you have had a day like that too. A day that lives in silence, but never leaves your heart. Stay with me till the end, because tonight, I'm going back to that moment. The moment she wanted proof. I gave silence, the weight of an unasked question. She stood before me, eyes full of storms, asking for proof of what something sacred. The night behind her held its breath, as if afraid of what might break. How do you prove what your soul under depletes? How do you measure love that never slept? She wanted words, but I had only silence, ancient and deep. My heart spoke in ways her doubts could not hear. Every glance I gave was a voice. Every pause a promise, every sigh a prayer for her peace. Yet she wanted proof, like love was a courtroom, and devotion a witness to be summoned. She forgot that some truths cannot be sworn, they must be felt. And so, I stood there, guilty of nothing but loyalty, guilty of giving too much to a heart that wanted receipts for tenderness. I gave her silence, not because I had nothing to say, but because my love had already said it all. Proof she couldn't see. What proof did she needed? The sleepless nights carved under my eyes. The way I turned the world away, just to keep her name unbroken in my breath. Wasn't my silence proof enough? Enough. I was tired of defending something pure. She searched for evidence in the ashes of a love still burning. But fire does not write letters. It only consumes. It only glows until nothing remains to question. I remember her tone, soft, trembling, like she wanted to believe me, but didn't know how. And I, the fool with a crown of patience, stood there, wondering why trust had to be tested. Does the sun bring a certificate of light every dawn? Does the ocean sign a contract with the shore? No, they simply are. And I was, for her, she wanted proof. I gave her silence, and in that silence, the universe whispered. He was true, between words and wounds. Every love story ends in two ways, true for pain. Mine found both. Mine found both in her eyes. Her eyes that once smiled like forgiveness. She didn't know what her question did. It tore through my chest like lightning. It was in doubt that killed me. It was the disappointment that love had to defend herself. I wanted to tell her, a silence isn't weakness, it's dignity. But words felt small beside her stall. So I stood, watching my own fate collapse under the weight of her uncertainty. How strange to love someone so completely and still not to be loved, not to be believed, not to be trusted. She wanted proof. I gave her silence, and in return, she gave me distance. the kingdom of doubt. There was a time she called me her forever, but she called me her maybe, her trust. Once a fortress had turned into an interrogation room. Love should never need witness, yet mine stood trial before her fears. She asked, "Do you really love me?" And I looked at her, the woman who was my compass, my calm, my chaos. How could I even answer? My whole life had been her answer. If only she could see how her air changed when she walked into a room. If only she knew how every prayer I whispered ended with her name. But she didn't want fate. She wanted proof, and fate never survives autopsy. The moment you dissect it, you kill what made it breathe. So I choose silence because truth doesn't scream, it needs to be felt. The sound of loyalty breaking. Days passed. My silence became the humor she feared. She thought my calm was guilty. She mistook my restraint for retreat. But love, real love, isn't noisy. It endures quietly like the moon, never asking applause for shining. I was her pull away, not out of anger, but confusion. She didn't understand that silence was my language of loyalty. Every answered question was a poem written in restraint. Every unspoken defense was proof she didn't deserve to doubt. And yet, I whispered, she had seen me. She had seen what my silence said. It said, "I'm still here, still yours, still certain." But some hearts only hear noise, not meaning. The echo of silence. Now years later, when memory smells like her perfume, and time still walks barefoot in her name, I ask myself, was I wrong to stay silent? Maybe proof could have saved us. Maybe my quiet loyalty was too heavy for her doubt. But then I remember, what is love if it must be proven? It's not love. It is transaction. It's not devotion, it is doubt. And I, my dear, was never in doubt to you. I was in love. I still see her sometimes in my dreams, asking me, again with her trembling voice, "Why didn't you say something?" And I whisper back, because silence was the only truth you couldn't twist. Love never need proof. It only need trust. And she heard both until she asked for more. So I gave her what she didn't expect. I gave her silence, because sometimes the loudest proof of love is what you refuse to prove. And when I turned of he, the wind carried her question into stars, and the stars answered, "He loved you." That was the proof. Her voice faded, but her question stayed, echoing through my ribs like a verdict, unfinished. I learned that silence is not emptiness. It's temple where truth kneels alone. Every night, I return there, barefoot, in memory, to pray for the peace she should never hold. And she could never, ever hold. They say love dies when it doubts. But my mind refused to die. It lived quietly, like a secret flame guarded by the moon. Sometimes I wonder, did she ever realize how loud my silence was? How every unspoken word was bridge she never dared to cross. I kept her alive in my pores, in the gaps between greed and reason. And even when I said nothing, I mean everything. Love, in its purest form, is not a declaration. It's a stillness, a calm that waits without needing to convince. And I become that calm, even when it hurt. Years passed. The world changed, its clothes, new faces, new skies, same ache. But every time I saw honesty in another's eyes, I thought of her, the woman who couldn't see it in mine. Her question became a scripture I could never close. Prove it. How many hearts have scattered and shattered under the weight of the undefined? In the end, proof is a slow death of trust. You cut it open to see if it's real, and by doing so, you kill what was living. If only she knew, I built my silence around her like armor, not to hide, but to protect what was too sacred to explain. Because love, when it's pure, does not beg to be understood. It simply exists quietly, like air, unseen but life itself. And I had become air. She was breathing me, yet asking if I was there. How could I prove something that already lived inside her? One evening, beneath a crimson dusk, our paths closed and crossed again. Her eyes were softer now, but not with love, but with realization. The same woman who once demanded proof now stood speechless before my silence. It took her years to hear what I had said without speaking. She whispered, "You never tried to convince me," and I smiled, not bitterly but sadly, because truth does not audition, I said. She lowered her gaze, and for the first time, she understood the cost of our doubt. There was no anger left between us, only the cost of what could have been, and time proved me right. She reached out, not to touch, but to remember how it once felt to be believed without question. The wind carried her perfume like forgiveness in disguise, and for a moment I almost wished she would ask again, just so I could stay silent once more. The grace of letting go. In silence I found my kingdom, in patience I found my crown. She was never my enemy, only my mirror, reflecting my ache for purity. I learned that not every heart is built for fate. Some hearts need signature, even from love itself. But love, real love, is flawless. It exists beyond evidence, beyond proof. So I forgave her. I forgave her, not for doubting me, but not knowing what love truly was. For how could she believe in something she never learned to feel? Now, when I speak to the stars, I tell them she was my question and I was her answer. She wanted proof, but all I had was eternity, and eternity doesn't speak. It endures. Every silence I gave her was a promise she never decoded. Every pause was loyalty, every withdrawal mercy. And maybe one day, when she used sits beneath the same moon, she'll remember proof fades where silence stays, because silence never lies. It carries a scent of truth long after words have turned to dust. And somewhere in that quiet infinity, my love still whispers. She wanted proof. I gave silence. And silence was everything.